What's up, Star Wars Unlimited fans? Loopee here at Late Night Gaming for the second round of our Learn with Commentary series. And I am really happy to be joined by my colleague in Voss Arms, Mickey D. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. How are you, Loopee? Pleasure being here. Ready to talk about some Star Wars Unlimited. Especially excited that Quinlan's involved.
Right. And we're doing these commentary rounds from the Chicago PQ, which was a maxed out capped PQ that happened. And just due to the timing, we got real busy, and I actually had a technical failure that prevented us dubbing these for a while. But what we're doing is actually analyzing the lines of play when we're doing commentary instead of doing kind of like sportscast style commentary. And I mean, I think that we know a little bit about this matchup here in round 5. It's Sabine
Just
versus
a little
Quinlan.
bit.
So
It's, yeah. I think Sabine versus Quinlan has been the most intricate matchup I've personally played in Star Wars Unlimited. I swear every time I play it, it plays out just a little bit differently. And then some games it's drastically differently. And so like you can come up with these different lines and these different rules of thumb, but you have to be super flexible and super open to change throughout the entire matchup.
yeah, and on the day that this event was taking place, you were actually the runner-up of the Iowa Planetary Qualifier.
Yes. So there was a planetary qualifier in Ankeny, Iowa. It was 64 players, so not quite as big, but I was busy getting second place there. Luckily, getting my invite still since my opponent in the finals already had theirs. But yes, and in fact, I won in this particular matchup in the semifinals to make it to the finals by getting hit with the Darksabered Sabine 3 times and still somehow winning the game. Like I said, this matchup plays out differently every single time.
Yeah, I should have run those bamboozles like I told you, buddy. That won't happen.
Yeah. I didn't need them.
So just take that 21 to face. Okay, so, I mean, for those that don't know, I was the runner-up playing Sabine Green, Sabine ECL, which is a great deck. I love that deck, both my wife and my son. It's their primary deck, and, I mean, I've played it all kinds, too. I've played this matchup significant times on both sides, so we'll see what we can teach you about it. It's not what people expect. I mean, at least my game plan to Sabine. I think that the lists are probably a little bit different. This video was right after the masterclass on Quinlan, or this PQ was. We don't know exactly the Quinlan players list. We know it's Gondorian Soldier. What we have here is the list that actually was the runner-up of the PQ from Aaron, a great player from Indianapolis. So tell the viewers before we start, what are you looking to do? What are you prioritizing into Sabine?
So initially you might think that like, oh, Quinlan wants to control the board, go a little bit later. They got the better top end. That's not the case. You can't go super late into Sabine, 1, because you have no healing. So you have no staying power into the late game. 2, their top end is just as good, if not better than yours.
Right.
Poe and Wrecker are insane cards, especially with ECL. And so the game plan I'm looking for mainly into Sabine, I came to in set 3, was to race them. If they manage to give you a turn 1 play that you can then ping Target Town, great, do that. But otherwise, you just play your cards, you Target Town when it's convenient, and you try and race them. So I'm looking for like Sabines and A-Wings, super aggressive starts. I think Falcon's an all-star in this matchup. Surprise Strike's an all-star in this matchup. And then any incidental disruption, I think Kira might be the key card in the matchup because it develops a body, it can ping a thing, although not always, but most importantly, it can name Darksaber on the flip turn. The way I've described this matchup is you just cannot respect the Sabine player. You just got to kind of do your game plan, push base. And with cards like Kira, you can often beat one of their big threats. And oftentimes you can play through a second. But if they have all 3, you're toast. So don't respect, like just never try and beat all 3 of their big cards.
Yeah, I think that in this list in particular, I mean, you really, really need that Kira on the Sabine flip turn because Darksaber, you have not a lot of answers to it at all. I mean, you have a couple of Fangs in the board, but you don't have the ability to Fleet Lieutenant an Ezra or a Cassian into Sabine to kill her on flip. I mean, Surprise Strike works too. That's Surprise Strike there. can prevent it. But Darksaber is the main way Sabine can win the race. I found that if you just kind of play, you incidentally remove something with Tarkentown and you race them, you will beat Sabine the large majority of the time. Well, I shouldn't say the large majority of the time. You will beat Sabine significant amount of the time. And that is the thing that leads to the best chance of success. Sabine always has the ability to kind of just God draw.
Notably, my Boston Network teammate Stan has very different opinions on this matchup. He very much likes to pass through turn one, thinks if they start playing stuff on turn two, you're favored, and also has good win rates into Sabine. It just goes to show that like the game plans may differ, but it's a very skill intensive matchup. And oftentimes, as long as you have a game plan and some forethought into it, the better player should win the matchup most of the time.
And, there's lots of haters out there that, think Sabine is an easy deck to pilot. Sabine is actually probably the deck that I find the difference between a good pilot and a not good pilot is the most obvious, right? I mean, so Sabine has a lot of little decisions that you go, and it is not just, turn card sideways to go base. That's a good way to lose.
Sometimes Sabine players sometimes win the game because they decide to skip pinging on turn two.
Right.
Realizing that on turn 6 they were going to need that extra life point. So it's a really forward-thinking deck.
Yeah, and we've talked about this before. I think it is a huge mistake for Quinlan to pass into Sabine because she can ping and claim, and then you needed that first turn more than Sabine does because you need to get there before you get record.
So there's a lot of discussion about Quinlan and whether you want to give your opponent initiative or take it yourself. And it's a nuanced discussion, and it's one I'm still identifying what the correct line is in a lot of matchups. One line that I know is 100% correct, I'm going to say this and it's going to bite me in the ass later, but one line I know that is 100% correct is you always give Sabine initiative if you're Quinlan. Because if they ping, it's like you had initiative anyway. And if they play their turn one play, then you get a ping Tarkentown it, and that's good for you.
Yeah.
I'm already like going back on it. The only time it can be bad is a list like this, where it's very heavy on the one drops.
Yeah. Well, you got it there. And actually, we know that Savvy22 is on the KTOD forum where we're there. I mean, we'll see his token in a second here. This list, I believe, was called Justin's Anti-Sabine list, or the list this was based upon. And I mean, it features 5 1-drops. I mean, trying to go 1-1 on turn 1. With 501st and R2. That's something that at least the Maddie Quinlan list at the time, I think actually Maddie was running up Soldier of the 501st himself towards the end, but there wasn't any 1-drops to get a Tarkentown ping. Further, there's 5 upgrades. I mean, there's General's Blade and the Darksaber, which is a problem.
Yes. If they do the double 1 plays, again, that's where like giving your opponent initiative can be totally okay. But the blades are really tough on the Sabine in particular. Sometimes you can catch your opponent off guard if they decide to get a little cheeky and saber up their R2 thinking it's safe from pings and Tarkentown, because then you can just blow them out with a waylay. But the blades are generally very tough for Quinlan to deal with if they don't have exactly waylay.
Right. And I think that the Sabine player, I mean, should be trying to actually extend and play a little control. If you can get control of the board and get to the point where you can ECL the Poe or the Wrecker and decimate the ground arena, Sabine is typically going to win that matchup.
Yes.
All right.
There's a big game back and forth tug between Tarkentown and ECL.
Yep.
Oftentimes, whoever uses their base first is the aggro. What I've identified. So like if Quinlan manages to somehow keep the board clear while still saving their Tarkentown, that's when they get to play a little bit more of a control heavy game, maybe try and get to Han Solo. But in general, you're using your Tarkentown before they're ACLing, which is why I think Quinlan in general should be more aggressive in this matchup.
So it doesn't feel particularly good when Sabine hits Han Solo for 6 overwhelm, which is something that it can happen because he has 6 health.
Yeah, with the Wrecker. That's why I like to try and save it if you're getting to that point post ECL, but they can still have time lease, which is brutal.
Right.
looking at G Soldier's opening hand here, one line I do want to mention that I think is a little bit of a trap is early on in testing, I thought Grogu was very good into Sabine because it's a fine answer to Darksaber, but you really want to pressure the board. And so the Sabine matchup is a big part of why later in the set I moved away from Grogu and onto Leia.
Right. I don't think that you can. So, I mean, if Sabine knows what they're doing, if they see a Grogu, they're just going to flood the ground arena and they're going to get control of it because that Grogu's not doing any damage back when it gets hit.
Yeah. And with Quinlan wanting to race more, I think it really shows that like Grogu doesn't do very well in a race if you're trying to win it before they can get to their big stuff.
All right. So Savvy opens with a ping, which I think is a good play. Quinlan correctly does not pass and plays an A-Wing, and A-Wing's a good play. Sabine does not have a first turn play.
That's another reason why you don't just pass as Quinlan. Is sometimes there's like a 2% chance, but sometimes they don't have a turn one play.
I like Yularen there from Sabine quite a bit. If you have Yularen, it's a great card into Quinlan because it changes the math of all of the health of all of your units, because I think every single unit in this list is heroic.
And I do think the most annoying 3-drop for Quinlan to face is Sundari Peacekeeper because that Restore 2 really changes the race. But Yularen has Restore 1 and also is adding all that health to your units, so
so
can similarly be powerful.
And Cassian's a good play there for the Sabine player. If there's, I mean, ideally what I'm looking for if I'm Gondorian Soldier right now is, I mean, either Kira or Ezra Force Throw. Either one of those are good lines into this particular
I also
situation.
think, like, back up to Kira, a Spark of Rebellion plus a 2-drop is also totally okay. Gets the... And here we see the Spark. It can get a Darksaber, which we see.
That's what you take.
Although, like I mentioned in the opening, he has all 3 bombs. This is the rare type of game I think you can win if they have all 3 bombs, since they skipped turn 1.
Right. So, going forward and thinking a little bit set 4, because that's right on everybody's horizon right now. I think that Quinlan will probably be running Bamboozles because of its ability to kill leaders right now. And that is a very good card into Sabine too. I mean, it's nice being able to stash a boozle and, you know, go. The reason that it was in my Quinlan deck was Sabine. You know, now it also kills leaders,
100%.
right? But it can be very
also has utility into Django when they TDR sneak attack
shields.
So
shields. There's like Gar Saxon plays 1 million shield units. That is a L3 from there.
So the 2+2 play here is pretty good. Quinlan going wide. He's gonna have Plo Koon active on his turn. Although on it, I don't know if you've found this, but weirdly enough, Plo Koon is a little slow in this matchup sometimes.
Yeah, and I mean, if I'm Sabine, I think I'm pulling the trigger on Plo right now and clearing the ground arena on Poe. Right? So Poe is going to kill Sabine, but Poe Dameron can actually kill Cassian and L3 at once with discarding.
Yes, it would take a lot of cards as well.
Yeah, it's okay. You're Sabine.
But that's true.
You have a wrecker for the next turn to take care of the Poe or the Plo. It won't be able to handle Quinlan, but you want to save the damage. Now L3 is going to hit or Cassian's going to hit. Cassian goes to base, which is correct.
And Quinlan does not use Tarkentown here, so that Poe, if it ambushes in and kills either the Plo or the Cassian, is just going to get Tarkentown on the way back.
Right.
And then Wrecker might be a little too slow at that point, I think. Although it does hit for 1 million.
Yeah, so now that Cassian's attacked, I mean, I think that you potentially just play out Poe Dameron, you know, to give you a threat there without using your ECL. And that's what
but then
Savvy
you can just, if you're Quinlan here, you can get your opponent to 20, or you can just claim, trade with that Poe, but then you can ECL Wrecker. Just a tight spot. This is really interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, this is a tough decision because you have another 5 damage on board. I mean, I think that a lot of it depends on whether I have Surprise Strike as Quinlan
Or even a hot shot. Like a hot shot on the Plo Koon gets him to 23, and then that green squadron is lethal. And I don't know how. Like then he would have to ECL his own green squad or a red 3 or something, which means he's not using it on Wrecker.
All right, so Quinlan
but-
deploys, does 3 damage, and we're going to the last round. The board is too wide. The board is too wide, so he has to he has to kill Plo Koon because Plo Koon is automatically
because Plo is lethal.
So I think it's Plo Koon and remove L.
I think it's
L3. Or
no, I think it's Plo and Cassian with an ECO Wrecker here.
Oh yeah, I suppose that does that.
Because then you get your 3 overwhelm. Looks like he's just going for Quinlan and Plo. I'd have to sit down and do the exact math because maybe it doesn't change the race at all. I like instinctively getting 3 to base here with that overwhelm.
So hot shot
Poe is 8.
Yeah, hot shot or surprise strike is the end of the game. It doesn't exist apparently.
But the green squadron can still just hit in for the last 3 even after you learn heals. So
right. All right, so we go to game 2. Quinlan player, Gondorian soldier, I think played very well. Went with the correct game plan, which was go there. Savvy did not use an early ECL. Really, though, I was not having the turn 1 play, which is something that can happen to every deck.
And you saw, like, that was kind of close at the end there. Poe got scary, Wrecker got scary. And it was because he had the 3 horsemen of the apocalypse, not 4, with Darksaber, Poe, and Wrecker. And like I was saying earlier, I think Quinlan can beat 2 of those 3. Sometimes can beat 1 of those 3 often, and can rarely beat all 3. That was one of the few cases where, because Sabine skipped turn 1, got just far enough ahead in the race that even having all 3 of those cards didn't matter. But without a spark there or a way to disrupt that Darksaber, I think Sabine steals that game, even still.
Right. No, the disrupting when needed to happen, and I think it was fine. Then just having an L3 go down. And,
any 2-drop would have done there.
Right, and I don't think Sabine had a K2 to ambush in to get a kill. So, all right. So both players are sideboarding. I mean, for Quinlan, I mean, you get faster. I mean, what you have.
Get faster and more effectively disruptive on the board with your disabling Fang Fighters and your bamboozles. Just ways to impact the race more effectively.
Right. And I mean, what you take out kind of depends on the list. I mean, I
usually
think
my Big Falcons every time.
Yep. And I think Han Unit is very close to a dead card. I mean, too.
I will sometimes keep a cheeky one of in my deck as an out, just in case the game gets in that weird spot where it somehow went long. But in general, I don't love having it in this matchup. No.
Depends what's in your.
So oftentimes.
Yeah, it depends what's in your sideboard too. I mean, if you have bamboozles and fangs in your sideboard, however many of those you have are coming in.
Yes.
Because
I also really like Waylay in this matchup because if Sabine goes for a game plan where they do just slam the Poe on 5 resources and don't ECL it, because you're like going for a space game plan, Waylay can be backbreaking. In the semifinals of the PQ that I was in, Waylay won me my final match because my opponent had a Darksaber Sabine that I just wasn't drawing Fang Fighters or Bamboozles for, and I was going all space. And then they decided to slam Poe. I was like delaying my Quinlan flip for as long as possible. I just waylaid the Poe, and then couldn't get me dead in 1 action, and I had him dead in 1 action on the way back.
All right, so I see the cards there from Quinlan.
I don't like that resource decision.
I don't like that resource decision at all because it looks like he's keeping Grogu and putting down Sabine Unit, which is not.
It might be him putting cards to the side that he wants to keep. I think that's what he's doing here.
Okay, well that's there
because the 2 cards he put down are 2 of my favorite cards in the matchup.
Right. So yeah, I think that's right. I think that probably is what he's doing. I mean, Grogu.
I think that's his keep pile.
Yeah. Grogu can be a cut.
I don't hate.
But that's
It looks like there's a mace he brought in. It looks like he kept a force throw in his hand as well, which is the one instance where I kind of like having Grogu.
Yeah, I mean, it can be, but I mean, if you pull a metal ceremony, it doesn't feel great. All right, so Gondorian Soldier hits Sabine. Savvy plays a Battlefield Marine. That's a problematic exchange for the Quinlan player. There's
an argument though, if you have another 2-cost here and you want a 2+1 to just go base with the Sabine, because your opponent's probably going to be trading in for you. But
yeah,
the safer play is just to trade.
Right. If you did actually still happen to have Grogu and Force Throw, that actually kind of could work.
Exactly.
But, there's a 2-drop there. L3.
But these are the nuances of this matchup where it's like oftentimes you should trade, but there's worlds where you need to go base at like that make it so enticing and like such a deep matchup in my opinion.
Right. So uses a Daring Raid and Tarkin Town to clear the Cassian. That's fine. So this is a pretty good start. That was a good turn for Gondorian Soldier, I think. And
looks like there's a Fang Fighter in hand as well, so has the answer to the Darksaber.
Yep.
And this is a spot where if I'm Quinlan, I'm probably early passing because I want to bait out this flip. And like, if Savvy just flips here and you pass as Quinlan, it gets a little awkward, I think. Like I like an early pass there.
I would have too, because the other thing you can do is with L3 in particular is represent Surprise Strike, which is just real strong. Mm-hmm. Now, if what happens is Savvy plays
but Sharp just attacks.
Yep.
Now I think I'm slamming a Falcon. Yep. Right. Although it is a little awkward because if Savvy they were to like slam a K2, you have to attack and then they get to claim initiative.
Right.
It's a little hairy, but with just a Sabine unit, I feel okay.
Right. And an A-wing. So
and then he claims
Gondorian Soldier is going to go in with initiative.
This is a little awkward because you would love to eat that A-wing first action to stop it from getting like wing leader or something. But there's enough wing leader targets that I'm not too concerned about it. And your L3 is going to get eaten on the way back by that Sabine unit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the last unit L3 wants to see is Sabine.
Also, I think he has a Plo Koon in hand here. Gondorian Soldier does. Had to pay for the Falcon, so can't get the Plo Koon with Coordinate off.
Right.
But now a Quinlan flip plus any 2-cost or higher will kill the Sabine unit.
Yeah.
But it leaves you really vulnerable to ECL Poe.
Which is what's happening. So it looks. Tosses the Darksaber to kill Quinlan.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so.
And you've already used your Tarkin Town, so you don't have a great answer for that card.
Yeah, and Poe hits.
I would have liked.
Poe hits fairly hard.
Yes. I would have liked, if you have any unit, I would have liked to play a unit first. So that way you're not burning resources here. Because your opponent's probably going to try and hold up that ECL Poe. So they probably, like you play a Kira, you'd obviously see, but even like a K2 here. You get a ping on the Sabine leader and your opponent attacks first. So you have used your resources and you're going into next turn with a K2.
You know,
I think you might just have to claim here.
And Fang Fighter is really weak given a Poe Dameron on the board. That feels bad. I don't know if maybe just forgot to pay the Falcon and thought that there would be 5 available, not 4.
Yeah, with the Plo Koon.
Or it very well could have been just poor draws that there weren't 4 resources left of good units here. But I mean,
I do think there are some games against Sabine where you can just go space race like A-wing into Falcon into Red 3 and just like kill them in space. But those are games you're not Plo Kooning ever. And so the Falcon and the Plo Koon really have attention in the deck.
Yeah. Okay. So there is a Plo here. So
Pings Poe and kills Sabine. I wonder if you almost have to trade into Poe here.
I think you do. You can't take 8.
It's a lot of damage.
Well, it's gonna be 6 because it's gonna kill the Fang Fighter, I think. But I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And I mean, we'll see what the hand is. Just tries to Bright Hope. Hey, that's what I mean. Bright Hope's still guarding the Space Arena even when discarded. I mean, what those Mon Calamari ships? I mean, you really just can't get enough of them. And that's a card that is absolutely crucial in Jump to Lightspeed. I think Savvy has Wrecker, and he's just going to use the When Plate of Wrecker to kill Plo. That's what makes the most sense, and that's what happens. And now you have the Bash Brothers in the ground arena for Sabine. You are
this is
winning the race. There's one Falcon. I mean, we should get to game 3 here in short order.
I do want to, while this game finishes up, I do want to go back to the flip turn from Gondorian Soldier. There are worlds where if you analyze your hand and decide that I just can't beat ECL Poe, that flipping Quinlan there is just correct because it gives you the highest chance to win in games where they don't have ECL Poe, and in games that they do have it. No matter what you did, you're going to lose. That's a hard thing to evaluate, and I think it's a crutch a lot of players leaned on. I know I leaned on it myself as a young card game player, of like just saying I couldn't beat any card, and so never playing around anything. But it is an important distinction and something to keep in mind.
And you do need to make them have it. I mean,
yes,
there's that, but I mean, I think that my concern with what happened there was more about the resourcing decisions and what was in hand with going into
agreed.
I mean, if the only play you have is a Fang Fighter, you probably should just bounce your Falcon back, so that you can Plo Koon. I mean, he had a ground arena at the time, and you need to get the Sabine killing the L3, takes coordinate off, but you want to try to do there. I mean, Leia's are good in that spot for sure.
Yes.
With 2 and 2. I mean, a lot of times I've almost always am double spelling with Quinlan or Plo Koon. It's one of the two. I mean, a lot of times it's like Kira Force Throw. I mean, a lot of the times.
Sometimes it's like Surprise Strike Falcon.
Sometimes it's like Surprise Strike. It's kind of putting it in order. It's like Leia, Surprise Strike, Force Throw. I mean, that's there because Quinlan comes online, to do it. But I mean, you typically have a lot of actions on that turn.
You can even go full race pump mode with Hot Shot Surprise Strike on that turn.
Right.
You can Spark on that turn plus a Falcon. Spark is really good on the Quinlan deploy turn 2.
Or Spark and a Sabine unit. It's always good if you have Force Throw on your Quinlan turn. That's when you want to be casting Force Throw. I mean, I think we were talking about, the potentiality of turn 2 Force Throw. I mean, this matchup is one where it can be okay, but it also can lose you the game. I mean, if what you do is you put all out on throwing a Grogu in there, and then Sabine does have a Metal Ceremony or a 1-drop to discard to make the Force Throw really bad. I mean, that does not feel good at all. I mean, you want to be trying to get the leader out, by making the Sabine player discard a Poe Dameron to kill Sabine leader, on 4.
There's so many different intricacies in this matchup. It's
and the other thing about Force Throw is, I mean, most of the time, if you can, you want to be playing it after Akira, right? So you know exactly what's in your hand, and then you don't have to stress about whether it's a good or a bad one.
Yep. Or if they've tapped out, sometimes you reverse that. You'll Force Throw them, and then they'll get rid of their worst card, and then you Kira them so that they didn't have knowledge of the Kira when they were getting Force Thrown.
Right. So, and on the Sabine side, I think Savvy played that one very well.
Yeah.
And I mean, really kind of jam things up. Leading in Grogu is a real challenge.
It's a little tough.
Yeah, I mean, if that's all you got, that's all you got.
Also, this start's not great. This is a start where you really need Sabine unit. That's 4 damage facing you down right away, and you can save 2 of it, but That's not going to be impactful enough.
Yeah, and if the other card is red 3, that's a problem. Savvy's correct. You hurt Grogu. I mean, that's the downside of playing Grogu is he doesn't hit back on your guys, right? He doesn't do damage to them as they come down. All right, so that's
he does effectively heal 5, but that's not going to be enough. Sundari this is about as bad of a start for like this is what you don't want to see if you're Quinlan in this matchup is double 1 into Sundari.
Right, or red 3. I mean, double 1 into red 3 is real bad too, unless you have a Falcon.
And even like. Unless you have a Falcon. Sundari, you can't really do anything about. Maybe like a hot shot here, plus a force throw. That could be okay this turn. Grogu also does some work.
Yeah. And I'm attacking Ezra into that Sundari, absolutely, right now.
I might go after the soldier if I have another answer. Just to save some damage this turn. This Grogu has kept the Sundari in check.
That's what he does.
Discards L3. Yeah, that's either a play or a discard. You're never leaving that on top.
Right.
Leave
on top. Leave on top is the least common. I mean, once in a while, if I know I need Plo Koon the next turn, I'll leave that on top. But that's really it. I mean, most of the times I'm either playing it or discarding. I mean, you obviously want to be getting like surprise strikes and force throws most of the time if you're early in sequence. All right, so Sabine is coming in. Both players have K2s, but Quinlan's...
With as bad as this game started for Quinlan, it's still not like terrible.
Yeah, no, there wasn't a Darksaber, which would have been the punch.
Yeah, but I'm still very scared of Poe here, and without having disrupted earlier, you kind of have to Plo Koon here if you have it. And I think the Plo Koon, by the way, goes after the Sundari. I don't think it goes after Sabine later.
Absolutely.
I know people get scared of the leader and want to kill it immediately. And like, because of cards like Waylay, the leader is spooky, but like, don't give the Sabine player back their ping. And like the Darksaber can go on anything.
Right.
And it's equally as scary, again, minus Waylay. So plus they showed you they didn't have it last turn.
Right. So I think it's going to be Plo Koon.
We'll see where it goes. There's also an argument for K2 because that takes the most damage off the board. But you can more effectively trade into that one.
Yeah, I think
there's also an argument to trade with K2 first action.
I think exactly what I do is Sundari and then I ping the K2 to force the issue and make him attack with it. But instead, Grogu taps down K2, and the Sundari comes in and restores. I don't like that.
I don't love it.
So now you do hit Sabine leader because she's ready.
This does take actions away from the Sabine player, so you kind of get to scout out whether or not they have Poe. Because if they attack, you attack, and then they're just passing.
Yeah.
They probably are waiting on an ECL Poe, but again, like they can always just play out the Poe.
Yeah. We'll see how this matchup goes because right now there's 2 ready units for Quinlan. Sabine is down as just a soldier of the 501st. Cannot kill Plo Koon with that. Could kill Grogu. Could not kill Ezra, which is important.
Notably, neither player has used their epic action on their base either. So, an ECL Poe from Savvy isn't the end of the world for Quinlan because you'll have the target town to respond.
Right.
If I'm Savvy here, there's an argument to just pass. Although I think Quinlan will probably.
Well, I think
there's an argument for Quinlan there to just claim.
I don't know about that.
It's a very tough. This is a very intricate spot. This is why I love this matchup and also hate this matchup.
Right.
It's one of the most dynamic in the game.
Right. So Soldier of the 501st attacks into Grogu, which is
Grogu?
that's exactly what I would have done had I been Savvy.
Yeah.
So, because that soldier of the 501st is going to get killed by something next. Though, I mean, taking care of the Sundari right now has benefits too.
Yeah. I mean, so like 7's a lot of damage too. The Sundari makes it unenticing to try and race here, though.
Right. No, I mean, you have to kill Sundari. It restores 2. Units with restore 2, you have to kill if you are in a race. And that is true if you're playing against red-blue that has Yoda. That is true. I mean, I think it really kind of applies to Kanan because he typically does get 2 against most decks. Ezra.
And I also...
Ooh, that's a force throw, isn't it?
It's either a force throw or a daring raid, but either way, I like it.
So that's I guess the other thing when you leave it on top is when it's your best card in there. Poe without the ECL and a nice hyperspace Poe. What a sharp looking card.
Mm-hmm. So you can answer that with your Tarkin Town in some capacity.
Yeah, I think that I'm clearing the Sundari with K2. I'm going to take a bunch of damage killing the Poe with Quinlan.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's looks like what's happening here.
That's good play by Gundarian Soldier. Quinlan Leader is not super crucial to the... Oh, he trades K2s instead of the Sundari.
Depending on the number of cards in Savvy's hand, I don't hate this. Like if he's down to 1 card, getting that card out of his hand could be very important.
Yeah, he's deciding which when defeat to do, and he loses a 4 cause. So...
Yep. But it looks like Savvy had about 3 cards in hand. I think I would have gone into the Sundari there.
Yeah, particularly because, I mean, you should have, you probably have Waylay. I mean, Waylay, the K2, is a much better response than killing it. The K2 would have done 2 overwhelm and not died to killing the Sundari and prevented the restore that's going to happen right now.
I mean, even like you can attack it into Sundari and the next turn decide to trade it into the K2.
Right. And Sabine has initiative. We are going to see a Poe.
Ooh, a second Poe. Okay.
There's always a second Poe. Now there's 2 of them. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to take care of Plo Koon and Quinlan at once.
Yep. Ezra gets to trade into it.
Oh, yeah, you do have to kill it. Well...
You could daring raid the Sundari first. No, because then the soldier can kill it. So you kind of have to.
Yeah, you gotta do something with Ezra right now for sure.
Either that, or if there's a force throw, you can bank on a force throw.
Okay, so Ezra does clear Poe Dameron. So now we go up to 15, and Sabine back to no damage done on base. Not at all where you want to be. I mean.
This is one of those weird games, though, where it did go a little later than you expect with Spark and stuff. Like, this is the kind of game where having Han in the deck, like as a one-of, can really start to take over the game.
Yeah.
But so there's a Daring Raid and a Fang Fighter.
Yeah, so one thing when you have Sabine, right? So, Dark Saber Sabine on the Sabine flip turn is one of the primary ways Sabine can flip this matchup. Usually, that's not what they're going to do on Resource 5 or Resource 6. So, I mean, depending on what your other choices were to keep in your hand, you don't have to hold a Fang just in case Sabine's going to Dark Saber the 501st. Probably not going to do that because she's not wanting to have it waylaid. Playing.
Although I will say, I talked about Han. It looks like this Mace is going to come down and be similar.
Mace is actually really good right now, but we're going to have.
Oh, 4 calls is tough.
Yeah,
and it looks like there's a record getting left on top too. And I think this is going to be heading towards a Sabine win most likely.
Well,
because that's just too far out of reach.
That's 22. So.
22, 3 pings. You got to kill him in 3 turns. A Wrecker's coming out next turn.
I mean, might have another 4 cause, right? Because Sabine is on 6.
I think he had to resource this turn.
No cards in hand. You're right.
One thing that can be frustrating about playing Quinlan is it's a discard heavy deck, but you can never really fade your opponent's top decks.
Right.
Like if Savvy top decks something like any unit that's not a Poe or Wrecker or not a for cause, like if he top decks like a Rebel Assault there too, I kind of like Quinlan's position at that point, but getting for cause there is a little brutal.
Right.
And that can happen into Django as well, where it's like, all right, I shredded their hands. I just need like a turn or two, and they top deck a TDR.
So the good news is he's pumped damage in with Mace, and Mace is sitting for 7. The bad news is he doesn't have any ability to machine gun because there's nothing to kill.
Wrecker here, if you have like a waylay, you need like a waylay and a Falcon.
Right. Yeah, both of these players are 4-0 at this point. This is the top match.
Mm-hmm.
And 224, you got to claim.
Yep. But I think he might just be seeing the rating on the wall. There's no real way out of this.
Yeah, you got to.
Yep. Very tight games.
I mean,
very, very tight games.
Very
and
tight
like, they all played super differently too. Like that last game went pretty late. The second game and the first game were super race intensive. Like just whoever gets the most damage on the board first. So
yep,
shows the dynamics in the matchup.
Yep. So Sabine, I mean, some people think that that's massively favored to Quinlan. It's not massively favored to Quinlan. I think that there's, depending on exact Quinlan list, I mean, either evenish or a slight edge.
So I do think people think it might be massively favored for Quinlan because I think it is more important for the Sabine player to play precise. Because if they just throw out their turn 1 play and you get to ping target on it, that's when I think Quinlan's massively favored. But if it's a sharp Sabine player, they're never going to do that.
That's exactly right. And that's what I think we were saying way back when we were talking about this line is, I mean, Quinlan can't be passing into Sabine and just expecting them to be bad. Right, because at some point, playing a game with all these smart people, you're going to get stuff like this where they're actively trying to, dodge Quinlan's original, play and get something on the board that can stick.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so that was a great match. I think it was pretty indicative of how this matchup can go. It was Quinlan really in the game 1 dominantly, taking care of it,
won that race,
and then Savvy, really doing well in the next 2 rounds. You're going to be back for some more matches with us in this series,
yes,
Mickey?
I will.
All right. So,
I'm excited to talk about more Quinlan.
All right.
Always excited to talk about Quinlan.
And we have a lot of it. We have a lot of it at this PQ. I mean, actually go here. I can go to this was the field. So very early in set 3, Sabine was the most represented deck with substantial blonde Sabine, which is something that happens around us.
Alex.
Yep. Cad Bane. Yeah, shout out to Rebel Resource. I mean, he does well in Wisconsin. There's some of those players around. Cad Bane is a significant
shout
deck.
out to Carlos.
Carlos
Yoda
had won the Chicago event there too. And then we have all kinds of Quinlan with Grumpy Elephant and one other on green, and then a lot of Tarkentown. This was after I had won the Madison thing, and then we did the masterclass. You had won something. I mean, Quinlan was coming out there. And, this was Han Solo was not really present, which is actually something that I expected, too.
That's I think the big takeaway from this. This is early on in the set, and Han wasn't as prevalent. It took a little bit to ramp up, but eventually Han started to steamroll pretty quick.
Right. All right. So we'll be back with another match with Thorman commentary tomorrow, and future rounds we'll have more of Mickey D. So thanks, man.
Yes.
And everybody, if you've watched this far, you're my hero.
Yeah.